All right, let's jump right into this. Today we're taking a really profound philosophical journey, mapping out the path from everyday material attachment all the way to ultimate spiritual surrender. We're going to break down a truly pivotal section of the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 7, verse 19. And let me tell you, this is a text that completely flips how we view the universe and our actual place inside it.
So, let's start right at the finish line, the ultimate destination of our spiritual journey. The text says, "After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare." Right off the bat, this single verse sets the entire stage. It introduces this absolute pinnacle of spiritual achievement, the exceptionally rare soul who has attained complete, unadulterated knowledge of the Absolute.
But, before we zoom way out to explore the cosmos and the fabric of reality itself, we've got to ask a pretty vital question. What actually makes this soul so incredibly rare? Like, what does it truly take to reach this ultimate state of knowledge and surrender? Claiming that out of countless living entities, only a tiny fraction reach this realization, that's a massive claim, right?
Which brings us to section 1, the exceptionally rare soul.
To really wrap our heads around this rarity, we need to look at the specific Sanskrit used here. The text calls this incredibly rare individual a mahātmā. Now, you've probably heard that word before. It translates to great soul. But in this very specific philosophical context, a mahātmā is defined by one massive realization. They understand that Vāsudevaḥ, the personality of Godhead, Lord Kṛṣṇa, is quite literally everything. And having achieved that huge universal vision, they just surrender fully.
Moving on to section 2, a journey of many births.
See, this level of realization, it is definitely not instant. It's not like you just wake up with it on a random Tuesday morning. The text actually emphasizes this vast, mind-boggling timeline with the phrase bahūnāṁ janmanām ante, which literally means after many births and deaths. So the spiritual realization we're talking about here requires this persistent, long-term evolution of the soul over multiple lifetimes. And this evolution happens in 3 pretty logical stages. First, right at the start of spiritual realization, you try to give up your attachment to materialism. Makes sense, right? But in doing so, step 2 often kicks in. You start leaning towards impersonalism. Basically, you strip away the material stuff and you're left with this sort of formless void. But then, as a person becomes even more advanced in step 3, they realize, wait, spiritual life isn't empty. There are actual activities in spiritual life, and those activities make up devotional service. Once the soul realizes this, they become truly attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
And that leads right into section 3, the world as a reflection.
So as a person levels up through these stages, their entire view of reality goes through this massive paradigm shift. They start contrasting the illusion of an independent material world, which is how most of us see things every day, with a much, much grander reality. They figure out that this material manifestation isn't independent at all. Instead, it's just a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness. Honestly, think of it like seeing a tree reflected in a lake. It's upside down, it's distorted, sure, but it points to a very real, dynamic spiritual reality just above it.
The absolute crucial point here is realizing that nothing, literally nothing, exists independently from him. Once that mahātmā gets this, they see that every single thing has a relationship with the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa. They begin to view absolutely everything in relation to vāsudevaḥ.
Let's expand on that in section 4, the cosmic universal vision. To even begin to grasp the sheer scale of this universal vision, we have to zoom way, way out to the macro level. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad describes Lord Vishnu as having thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, and thousands of feet. He completely encompasses the entire universe, and yet, and this is wild, he still extends beyond it by 10 fingers' breadth. He is, in fact, this entire universe, all that was, all that will be, the Lord of immortality. Just let that sink in for a second. It is a staggering, mind-bending description of a truly all-pervading presence.
Now, bringing it back down, in section 5, the true center of life.
Okay, having stretched our minds out to the absolute edges of the cosmos, let's zoom all the way back into our own bodies. The text beautifully contrasts our basic everyday sensory powers with the underlying life force. Think about it. In our bodies, the power to speak, see, hear, or think, those aren't the prime factor. If you lack life, none of those powers work at all. The text identifies life itself, prana, as the true prime factor, the literal center of all activities. And here's where it gets amazing. The author takes that bodily metaphor of the life force and scales it right back up to the universal level. Just like life is the center of your body, Lord Vāsudevaḥ, the personality of Godhead, is defined as the prime entity in everything. He is the underlying life force of the entire cosmos.
This completely challenges us to reevaluate our daily experiences. The text boldly states that yes, in this body we have the power to speak, see, hear, and think, but actually, these aren't important at all if they aren't related to the Supreme Lord. Without that divine connection, they totally lack their true purpose. It's exactly like how eyes are completely useless without the life force animating the body.
Which brings us to our final stage, Section 6, the path of full surrender.
With that deep understanding of both the macrocosmos and the microbody, we hit the climax of our journey, but we have to pause one last time and ask, why? Even with all this evidence of the universal cause, does this completely surrendered soul remain su-durlabhaḥ? That's a Sanskrit term meaning very rare to see. Why is it still so incredibly uncommon?
Well, the answer lies in the sheer magnitude of what this realization demands. True, full surrender, the highest possible goal, only happens when someone achieves this complete, universal vision over the course of many, many lifetimes. As the text sums it up perfectly, because Vāsudevaḥ is all-pervading and everything is Vāsudevaḥ, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge. It just takes immense spiritual maturity to look right past that independent material illusion and actually see the all-pervading prime entity in absolutely everything.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by this profound text. If everything around us, this independent material world we stress over every single day, is merely a distorted reflection of a much grander spiritual reality, what part of your life will you view differently today? How does recognizing a universal prime factor actually change the way you see, hear, and interact with the world right now? Keep that question with you. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.